What's up, everyone? I need to vent before I lose my mind. This is going to be a long one, so buckle up. I'm Ethan, 26, and I've been living with my parents for way too long, not because I'm some jobless couch potato, but because rent is insane, and my job as a software engineer is right around the corner. I've been paying my parents $500 a month since I turned 18. I thought it was fair. They helped me out, and I avoided throwing money at some random landlord. Win-win, right? Wrong. See, my older brother Ryan, 29, is the golden child. Always has been. The guy could set the house on fire, and my parents would excuse it as him being passionate. Meanwhile, if I so much as forgot to turn off a light, I'd get a lecture about responsibility and wasting electricity. It's been like this my whole life, but I sucked it up because, hey, family. Then, a month ago, Ryan called my parents in a panic. He and his wife, Emily, were between places, which, in Ryan speak, meant they were broke and had been evicted again. My parents didn't hesitate. Come home, bring the kids, stay as long as you need. No discussion with me, no warning, just bam. Instant roommates. Ryan, Emily, their 2 kids Lena, 6 and Jake, 3 plus their yappy little dog, all crammed into our house. It went from quiet to absolute chaos overnight. The kids wake up at 6 a.m. screaming. The dog pees everywhere. My work-from-home setup? Gone. The spare room where I had my desk? Now a storage unit for their junk. So I'm stuck working in my bedroom while Ryan lounges on the couch, unemployed, playing Xbox all day. And guess who's still paying rent? Me. Guess who isn't? Ryan and his entire freeloading family. I tried to be patient. Really, I did. They have kids, they're struggling, I get it. But things got worse fast. My stuff started mysteriously disappearing or breaking. If I said anything, I got the usual, they're just kids. Excuse. And Ryan? He's suddenly hyper-protective of Emily, acting like I'm some homewrecker for even saying good morning to her. It's ridiculous. Then, last week, my mom knocked on my door with that nervous smile she gets when she wants something. "Ethan, honey," she said, fiddling with her wedding ring. With Ryan and his family staying here, expenses have gone up. Groceries, utilities, everything. We were thinking maybe you could contribute a little more, just until Ryan gets back on his feet. I stared at her. "You want me to pay more? While Ryan and his family live here for free?" She sighed. "It's not free, sweetheart. Family helps family." There it was. The magic phrase that only applies to me. How much more are we talking? Just another $300 a month. That would bring my rent up to $800. $800. To live in a house where I had zero privacy, a stolen workspace, and a constant headache from screaming kids and an untrained dog. I told her I'd think about it just to get her off my back. But inside, I was fuming. That night at dinner, my dad backed her up, going on about how everyone needs to do their part while Ryan shoveled food into his mouth, occasionally mumbling, "Thanks for understanding, bro." Then my mom dropped the final bomb. "Oh, and Ryan and Emily are going out Friday night. You'll watch the kids, right?" Not asked, told. "I have plans," I said, even though I didn't. Mom frowned. "What plans?" Like I needed her approval to have a social life. Ryan jumped in. "Come on, man, we haven't had a night out in forever." The kids love their Uncle Ethan. Everyone stared at me, waiting for me to cave. I exhaled. Fine, whatever. Friday rolled around, and instead of relaxing, I spent the night chasing hyper kids and stopping the demon dog from destroying my room. Ryan and Emily were supposed to be home by 10. They stumbled in at midnight, tipsy, with zero apologies. Oh, and while I was babysitting, their dog took a dump on my bed. That was the moment I realized I was done. I wasn't about to keep paying for the privilege of being the family's free babysitter and ATM. It was time for a change. Operation GTFO was officially a go. After that night, something inside me snapped. I wasn't just annoyed anymore, I was furious. I'd been paying rent for years, following the rules and being a responsible adult while Ryan coasted through life without lifting a finger. And now I was expected to pay even more, just so he and his family could freeload? No, absolutely not. I started thinking about moving out. The problem? Finding an affordable place in this city was like winning the lottery. Every time I looked at listings, I either found a shoebox apartment for double my budget or something that looked like it had been condemned years ago. But I knew one thing for sure. I had to get out before my parents found another excuse to squeeze more money out of me. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they did. The morning after babysitting, I walked into my room and froze. Emily was standing by my desk, rummaging through my drawers. She gasped when she saw me, her hand snapping back like she had just touched fire. "Oh, I was just looking for some tape. The kids wanted to make a craft." I stared at her. "Tape? You're telling me you had to dig through my desk for tape?" "I didn't find any in the kitchen," she mumbled, avoiding eye contact. "Bullshit," I said, crossing my arms. "There's a whole drawer full of it in there. It's been in the same spot since I was a kid." Before she could say anything else, Ryan appeared in the doorway, his arms crossed. "Everything cool here?" "Yeah, everything's fine," I said, still glaring at Emily. "Just caught your wife going through my stuff." Ryan's eyes darkened. "Dude, don't make a big deal out of nothing. She said she was looking for tape. Then why did she jump like she got caught stealing?" Emily scoffed. "Oh my God, Ethan, you're being paranoid." I clenched my jaw, breathing through my nose. "Stay out of my room." Ryan let out a dry laugh. "Man, you've always been so uptight about your space. We're family, remember?" That word family was starting to sound like a threat rather than a bond. I didn't bother arguing. I just turned and walked out, feeling my blood boil. Later that night, I locked my room before bed for the first time in my life. A couple of nights later, I was heading to the kitchen when I heard voices coming from the living room. I paused in the hallway when I caught my name. "Ethan has always been so selfish," Ryan was saying. I frowned, stepping closer. "He has thousands saved up," Ryan continued. "But instead of helping the family, he just hoards it for himself." My mom sighed. "I just don't think he understands what it's like to have a family to provide for." Oh, I understood just fine. I understood that I had been paying my own way since I was 18, while Ryan had never paid a dime. Then Ryan lowered his voice. "And Emily doesn't even feel comfortable around him." I nearly choked. "What?" "He's always hovering," Ryan said. "Like she can't even make breakfast without him being there." I wanted to kick down the door and scream. The only reason I was ever in the kitchen was because I had to eat, and I actively avoided them whenever possible. But now he was trying to spin some weird narrative to make me look bad. I turned around and stormed back to my room, my appetite gone. The next morning, I sat down for breakfast, determined to act normal. My parents were being their usual passive-aggressive selves. Ryan was scrolling on his phone, and Emily was making coffee like she hadn't been caught snooping. Then my mom casually said, "Since you agreed to the rent increase, I'll need that extra $300 by Friday." I stopped mid-bite. "Wait, I never agreed to that." My dad looked up. "You said you'd think about it." "Yeah, and I did think about it. My answer is no." My mom's face pinched. "Ethan, we're struggling right now. With the kids and the bills, we just need everyone to pitch in a little more." "Then why isn't Ryan paying anything?" I shot back. Silence. Ryan looked up from his phone, frowning. "Dude, I don't have a job right now." "Then get one," I snapped. "You've been here for a month doing nothing but playing video games while I work every day and still pay rent." Mom put a hand on my arm like she was trying to soothe a wild animal. "Sweetheart, he has children to take care of?" "And whose fault is that?" I said, pushing back my chair. "If you need more money, maybe stop funding Ryan's lifestyle and let him figure out how to be an adult for once." The tension was suffocating. Then, like a cherry on top, my mom said, "Oh, and you're watching the kids again this weekend." I laughed. Actually laughed. "No, I'm not." Mom's face hardened. "Ethan, they have a wedding to go to. It's just one weekend. Not my problem." Ryan shook his head, muttering, "Selfish as always." I turned to him, eyes burning. "You're calling me selfish? You've never paid rent in your life. You moved in, took over the house, let your kids destroy my stuff, and now you expect me to bankroll your entire existence while I live like a damn prisoner?" Ryan rolled his eyes. "Dude, you're overreacting." "Am I?" "Because last I checked, you were the one eating food I paid for while doing nothing all day." Mom stood up. "Ethan, enough!" I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. "No, I'm done." They all stared at me. I turned on my heel and walked away, heart pounding. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't just thinking about leaving anymore, I was leaving. No warnings, no goodbyes. The next phase of Operation GTFO had begun. I spent the entire night lying awake, staring at the ceiling. My brain was on fire, replaying every moment that had led me to this point. The invasion of privacy, the manipulation, the endless freeloading. It was like I had been sleepwalking through my own life, letting them walk all over me. Not anymore. By sunrise, I had a plan. The first thing I did was text my buddy Chris. We hadn't been super close since high school, but we still grabbed beers every now and then. I remembered he had mentioned his roommate was moving out soon, and I prayed the spot was still available. Me, hey man, random question, you still looking for a roommate? I wasn't expecting an immediate response, but my phone buzzed within minutes. Chris, dude, this is wild timing. My roommate just told me he's moving in with his girlfriend next month. You serious? Me, dead serious. I need to get out of here ASAP. Chris bro, move in with me. Rent $600, split utilities. It's a 2-bedroom. No kids, no dogs, no bullshit. I nearly dropped my phone. This was it. My way out. Me, I'll take it. Just like that, my escape was in motion. The hardest part was making sure my family didn't catch on. If they knew I was planning to leave, they'd find a way to guilt me into staying. I needed to be smart. I started small. Each day, I packed a few things, a couple of books, winter clothes, my extra computer accessories. I'd take a small load out to my car before work, then drop it off at Chris's place on my way home. Slow and steady. The trick was acting completely normal. At dinner, I nodded along while my parents talked about bills. I even faked a smile when my mom reminded me about the extra rent payment, pretending like I hadn't already decided to ghost them before the week was up. The only problem? Zeus, the demon dog. That little furball had developed a habit of following me everywhere. Every time I snuck something out to my car, he would start yapping like I was smuggling drugs. So I had to bribe him. I started carrying treats in my pocket. Whenever I needed to move something, I'd toss him a piece of chicken, and he'd happily trot away, tail wagging. It was ridiculous, but it worked. Then came the close call. One evening, as I was loading a small box into my car, I heard a voice behind me. "What you doing, Uncle Ethan?" I nearly jumped out of my skin. I turned to see Lena, my 6-year-old niece, standing behind me, watching with wide, curious eyes. "Just getting rid of some old stuff," I said, forcing a casual smile. "Can I see?" "It's just boring work stuff," I lied. "Old papers and junk." She tilted her head. "Are you moving?" My stomach clenched. "No, sweetie, just cleaning up a bit." She stared at me for a long moment before nodding and running back inside. I exhaled. That was way too close. A few nights later, I came home to find Zeus had chewed through my $200 gaming headset. Completely destroyed. I stormed into the living room, holding the ruined mess in my hands. "Ryan," I said through gritted teeth, "your dog ate my headset." Ryan barely looked up from his game. "It's just a headset, man. Chill. Just a headset? This thing cost $200. Ryan shrugged. "Not my fault you left it out." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you kidding me? Your dog has destroyed my stuff multiple times, and you've never replaced anything." Ryan sighed dramatically, like I was inconveniencing him. "Dude, it's not a big deal. Just buy another one." I stared at him. This was a grown man, sitting on a couch he didn't pay for, in a house where he didn't contribute, telling me to replace my own stuff because his dog destroyed it. And then, because of course it could get worse, I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen later that night. "Maybe Ethan could dip into his savings a little to help out," my mom was saying. "I was thinking the same thing," my dad agreed. "He's got that money saved up, and we're in a tough spot." My blood ran cold. They weren't just trying to get me to pay more rent. They were plotting to take my savings. That was it. The absolute final straw. I went to my room, locked the door, and started making calls. First, I called my bank. I changed my security questions, updated my password, and made sure nothing could be accessed without my explicit permission. Then I made a list. Change address for my bills and bank statements. Remove any important documents from the house. Gather the last of my essentials, get out. Before they knew what hit them, I had 3 days. That was the deadline. Friday morning, I woke up before sunrise. I had packed everything the night before, leaving just the essentials: clothes, laptop, toiletries. I moved quickly, loading the last of my stuff into my car while the house was still asleep. But of course, Zeus nearly ruined it. As soon as I grabbed my backpack, he started barking like crazy. "Shh," I whispered, throwing him a treat. But he just swallowed it and kept barking. I panicked. If he woke up my parents, I was screwed. So I did the only thing I could think of. I picked him up and locked him in the bathroom with another treat. I felt bad, but desperate times called for desperate measures. I took one last look at my bedroom, the place I had lived my entire life. Then I grabbed my keys, walked out the front door, and drove away as the sun was rising. No goodbyes, no explanations. I was free. By the time I got to Chris's apartment, my phone was blowing up. "Mom, 7:02 a.m. Ethan? Where are you?" "Mom, 7:15 a.m. Your room is empty. Call me now." "Dad, 7:30 a.m. What the hell is going on?" "Ryan, 7:45 a.m. bro." Real mature. I ignored them. Chris helped me carry my stuff inside, clapping me on the back. "Dude, you did it." I grinned, feeling lighter than I had in years. "Yeah, I did." Then I turned my phone off and didn't look back. I woke up the next morning feeling something I hadn't felt in years: peace. No screaming kids. No barking dog. No guilt-tripping parents hovering over me. Just silence. Chris had already left for work, so I had the apartment to myself. I made coffee, sat on the couch, and let it sink in. I was free. No more paying rent for a house I had no privacy in. No more surprise babysitting duties. No more being treated like an ATM. Then I made the mistake of turning my phone back on. 28 missed calls. The flood of texts was even worse. "Mom, 7:02 a.m. Ethan, where are you?" "Mom, 7:15 a.m. Your room is empty. Call me now." "Dad, 7:30 a.m. What the hell is going on?" "Ryan, 7:45 a.m. bro." Real mature. "Mom, 8:00 a.m. We are worried sick." "You just left?" "Dad, 9:00 a.m. Call your mother now." "Mom, 9:30 a.m. You're being so cruel." I put my phone down, shaking my head. Cruel? I was cruel for refusing to be their personal cash cow? For leaving a toxic situation? I was debating whether to call back when my phone started ringing. "It was my mom," I sighed, bracing myself, and answered. "Ethan," she said, her voice shrill. "How could you do this to us?" I took a deep breath. "Mom, I told you I wasn't paying more rent. I told you I wasn't watching Ryan's kids anymore. You didn't listen. So I left." She let out a shaky breath. "But you didn't even tell us. You just disappeared. Because if I had told you, you would have guilted me into staying." "Of course we would have. We're your family," she snapped, as if that alone justified everything they'd done. I clenched my jaw. Family doesn't treat one person like a walking wallet while letting someone else freeload. Ryan is almost 30 and hasn't paid rent a single day in his life. But I was expected to hand over more money and give up my space? "That's different," she said quickly. "Ryan has a family. He has responsibilities, and I don't?" I shot back. "I'm supposed to put my life on hold so he can avoid growing up?" "No, Mom. I'm done." There was a long silence. Then her voice wobbled. "Your father and I, we can't afford the house without your rent." There it was, the real reason for the panic. "You chose to be dependent on my money," I said, my voice flat. "That's not my problem." She started crying then, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty about it. "I have to go," I said, and hung up. For a few blissful hours, I had peace again. Then Ryan texted. "Ryan, wow, dude. Just wow. Ryan, you abandoned your family over a few bucks? Ryan, Mom's been crying all morning. Hope you're proud." I rolled my eyes. He had never cared about Mom's feelings before. But now that my absence was affecting him, suddenly he was the concerned son. I ignored him. An hour later, he tried again. "Ryan, you're so selfish. Ryan, we needed you. Ryan, do you even care what happens to us?" I stared at that last one for a while, debating whether to respond. Finally, I typed back, "Me, I cared for 8 years. I paid rent while you lived for free. I helped while you made excuses. I did my part. Now it's your turn." No response. That night, I got a text from my cousin Mark. "Mark, dude. Just heard the drama from Aunt Lisa. You okay?" "Me. Yeah, I'm fine. Just needed to get out. Mark, bro, you are not going to believe this. He sent a screenshot of a family group chat. I wasn't in. Mom, Ethan just abandoned us. We're barely making ends meet. He left us struggling just so he could be selfish. Ryan, he's always been like this. Never cared about anyone but himself. Aunt Lisa, didn't he pay rent for years? Why wasn't that enough? Mom, we had to help Ryan out with some things, so it went toward that. Aunt Lisa, what things? Mom, some financial trouble. Aunt Lisa, you mean his gambling debts? I read that last message 5 times. My stomach twisted. Gambling? I knew Ryan was irresponsible, but gambling? I texted Mark back immediately. Me, what the hell do you mean gambling? Mark, apparently, Ryan racked up a bunch of debt last year. Your parents have been covering for him. That's why they needed your rent so bad. I felt sick. They had lied to me. The extra money they wanted? It wasn't for bills. It wasn't for groceries. It was to bail Ryan out again. I clenched my fists. They hadn't just used me. They had manipulated me. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. But I knew one thing for sure. I was never going back. The next morning, I blocked Ryan's number. Then I blocked my parents. I wasn't going to be their backup plan anymore. For the first time in my life, I was choosing me. And damn, it felt good. Blocking my family was the best decision I had ever made. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells. No more waking up to passive-aggressive texts. No more guilt trips about how I was abandoning my family. No more being blamed for things that weren't my responsibility. It was peaceful. And then, of course, they found a new way to come after me. It started small. A text from an unknown number. Unknown, Ethan, it's your father. We need to talk. Blocked. Then another number. Unknown, your mother is heartbroken. You just disappeared without saying anything. Blocked again. Then came the flying monkeys' extended family members who had no idea what was actually going on, but were more than happy to lecture me about respecting my parents. Aunt Lisa, Ethan, I heard you just abandoned your poor mother. You need to make this right. Uncle Dave, family is family. You'll regret cutting them off one day. Cousin Megan, wow. So you just left them high and dry? How could you? I ignored most of them. But when Aunt Lisa kept pushing, I finally snapped. Me? Did Mom tell you that my rent money was covering Ryan's gambling debts? Silence. Then, after a long pause, Aunt Lisa, she didn't mention that part. Yeah, I figured. The texts slowed down after that. A few days later, Chris and I were chilling in the living room, playing some co-op shooter, when my phone rang. Blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, it buzzed again. Blocked. Then a notification popped up, one new voicemail. Curious, I played it. Ryan's voice came through, slurred and angry. Dude, you're such a selfish little piece of shit. You think you're better than us just because you ran away? News flash, asshole, you're nothing. You're a joke. You always have been. I rolled my eyes and put my phone down. Chris glanced over. Let me guess. Your brother? Yup, Chris snorted. Man, you dodged a bullet getting out of there. He wasn't wrong, but Ryan wasn't done. The next day, I was at work when my phone started blowing up again. This time, it was from my apartment's front desk. Front desk, hey Ethan, there's a guy here asking for you. Says he's your brother? I gripped my phone. You've got to be kidding me. Chris, who was on his lunch break with me, raised an eyebrow. What now? Ryan. He actually showed up. Chris whistled. Damn, he must really be desperate. I exhaled slowly, thinking. Then I called the front desk. Hey, yeah, don't let him in. I'm not expecting visitors. The receptionist hesitated. He's making a bit of a scene. I sighed. How bad? He's yelling about how you ruined his life and abandoned your family. Security is about to escort him out. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Tell security to do their thing. If he keeps causing trouble, call the cops. There was a pause. Then will do. I hung up, my hands tightening into fists. Chris shook his head. Dude's unraveling. Yeah, I muttered. And I'm done cleaning up his mess. That night, I got a final text from Ryan. Ryan, you think you're so smart, but you'll come crawling back when life gets hard. You need us. I stared at my screen, then laughed. Needed them? I had a stable job, a solid living situation, and actual peace for the first time in years. The only thing they had ever given me was stress. I didn't respond, just blocked the number and went back to my life. A week passed with blissful silence. Then, out of nowhere, my dad called from yet another unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. When I checked it, his voice was tight with controlled anger. "Ethan, I hope you're happy. Your mother is sick over this. We're struggling, and all you care about is yourself. Well, you got what you wanted. We might lose the house because of you. I hope you can live with that." I laughed bitterly. They might lose the house? They had the money to cover Ryan's gambling debts, but suddenly, when I stopped paying rent, they were in financial trouble? Yeah, sure. That wasn't my problem anymore. I deleted the voicemail without a second thought. Over the next few weeks, my life settled into something that actually felt normal. I went to work, came home to a peaceful apartment, and finally had time to focus on my own goals. I started working on my game development projects again, something I hadn't been able to do when I was constantly being pulled into family drama. And you know what? I was happy. No more financial leeching, no more toxic guilt trips, just me, living my life the way I wanted. One day, Chris and I were grabbing drinks when he smirked at me. "So, any regrets?" I shook my head. "None." "Best decision I ever made." He clinked his beer against mine. Damn right. The last bit of drama came a month later when my cousin Mark texted me again. "Mark, dude. You're not gonna believe this." Me. "Oh God. What now?" "Mark, your parents finally gave Ryan an ultimatum." I sat up, suddenly interested. Me. "Wait. What kind of ultimatum?" "Mark, either he gets a job in the next 30 days, or they're kicking him out." I blinked. I hadn't expected that. I had always assumed my parents would enable Ryan forever. But I guess losing my financial support had finally forced them to face reality. Me? Damn. How's he taking it? "Mark, not well. Apparently he thought they'd never actually push him to do anything. Now he's freaking out because he has no backup plan." I smirked. Karma's a bitch. And with that, I closed the chapter on my family drama for good. It had been 2 months since I left, and I had never felt more at peace. Every morning, I woke up in an apartment that was actually mine. No screaming kids, no barking dog, no random accusations from Ryan. I could work in silence, eat my own food, and best of all, I didn't have to hand over my paycheck to cover someone else's problems. I had expected my parents to keep trying to reach me, but after my dad's last voicemail, things had gone quiet. No more texts, no more unknown numbers, just silence. That was until one afternoon when Chris and I were grabbing lunch. My phone buzzed with a text from Mark. "Mark, bro. Update on the Ryan situation." I sighed and took a bite of my sandwich. "Mark's got an update on my brother," I told Chris. Chris snorted. "This ought to be good." I opened the message. "Mark, Ryan still hasn't found a job. Parents gave him a final warning. If he doesn't start paying rent by the end of the month, they're kicking him out." I raised an eyebrow. Huh. Looks like my parents are finally growing a spine. Chris leaned back in his chair. "Think they'll actually do it?" I thought about it. If there was one thing I knew about my parents, it was that they hated confrontation. They had spent years bending over backward to make sure Ryan never faced real consequences. But now that I was gone, the financial cushion they had relied on had disappeared. They had no choice but to face reality. "They might," I said. "If only because they literally can't afford to keep enabling him anymore." Chris smirked. "Karma's working overtime." I went back to my lunch, feeling strangely detached from the whole thing. A few months ago, I would have been caught in the middle of this mess, expected to fix everything. Now, it wasn't my problem. 2 weeks later, Mark texted me again. "Mark, dude, it finally happened. Ryan got kicked out." I blinked at my screen. Me, no way. "Where's he staying?" "Mark, not sure. He was scrambling to find a place, but nobody wants to take him in. Even mom and dad's siblings said no." I let out a low whistle. Ryan had spent his whole life expecting people to bail him out. But now that the money had dried up, everyone was suddenly busy. Chris saw my face and raised an eyebrow. "What now?" "Ryan finally got kicked out." Chris burst out laughing. About damn time! Where's he staying? I shrugged. No idea. Apparently nobody in the family wants to take him in. Chris shook his head, still grinning. Man, he must be losing his mind. I imagined Ryan, for the first time in his life, facing real consequences with nowhere to turn. No free ride, no excuses, no one willing to clean up his mess. I didn't feel bad. He had years to get his act together. He chose not to. I thought that would be the end of it. But a few days later, an unknown number called while I was at work. I let it go to voicemail. When I checked it, I almost laughed. Ryan. Hey man, he started, his voice unusually calm. Look, I know things have been rough between us, but I think we should talk. I already knew where this was going. I get it, okay? I wasn't the best brother, but things are different now. I'm in a bad spot. Mom and Dad really screwed me over, man. I thought they had my back, but they just threw me out like I was nothing. And I know we've had our issues, but we're still brothers, right? Ah, there it was. I was thinking maybe we could help each other out, you know? You've got a place now, and I just need somewhere to stay for a little while. Just until I get back on my feet. I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly. Of course, Ryan didn't want to fix things. He wanted another free ride. And now that Mom and Dad were no longer an option, I was next on his list. I deleted the voicemail without responding. A week later, I ran into Mark at a coffee shop. He looked relieved to see me. Man, I have to tell you something, he said. I raised an eyebrow. What now? He took a sip of his coffee before continuing. Ryan finally left town. He moved in with some old friend from high school. Apparently, it's a sketchy situation, but it's all he could get. I nodded, unsurprised. Not my problem. Mark smirked. You really don't care anymore, do you? I thought about it for a second. No, I said honestly. I really don't. And I meant it. For years, I had been stuck in that toxic cycle, always expected to fix everything while Ryan did whatever he wanted. But the moment I stepped away, everything changed. The weight I had been carrying financially, emotionally was gone. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't resentful. I was just done. Good for you, man, Mark said, clapping me on the shoulder. You deserve to live your life. Yeah, I did. Life moved on. I focused on my job, kept working on my game development projects, and even started dating again. Without the stress of my family weighing me down, everything felt lighter, easier. One evening, Chris and I were playing a new co-op game when he glanced at me. So, no regrets? I shook my head. Not a single one. Chris smirked. Man, you've got to post an update on Reddit. People are gonna love this story. I laughed. Maybe, but honestly, I think I'm just happy moving forward. I meant it. For the first time in my life, I was actually free. And I wasn't looking back. Story 2, I'm excluded from trips because I have a different dad than my brothers, is the title of this article. When they learn that my uncle manages internships worth millions of dollars, they are immediately friendly. The scenario was unexpected to them. You need to know some background information before I go into the main points of this shit show. I am a 16-year-old boy with 3 half-brothers. A 16-year-old boy named Caleb, and twins Ethan and Tyler, all of whom are 18. Our fathers are different, but our mothers are the same. Their father has an active role in their lives. He takes them on all these amazing adventures while they stay with him every other week. They visited California, a wild trekking excursion in Colorado, and even friggin' Japan just last year. In the meantime, I haven't heard from my dad since he left when I was a kid. He is a complete phantom. Not even a card for your birthday? Nothing. If my brothers weren't such dicks about it, I wouldn't give a damn about any of it. Like they don't treat me badly or anything. They don't call me names or beat me up. That is not the worst of it. They essentially pretend that I don't exist. The majority of the time, they have their own little clique, inside jokes, and brotherhood, and I'm just not included. Some of my school pals have elder brothers who genuinely watch out for them and give them advice. Spend time with them. Mine, they'll pass me by in the school corridor as if I'm completely strangers. My mother also doesn't assist. She puts in a lot of work. She is also always exhausted or preoccupied with her own affairs when she is at home. I understand. My brothers abuse me badly, and despite her best efforts, she never seems to notice. Or perhaps she is aware of it, but is unsure of how to respond. It's awful in any case. My mom's brother, Uncle Dave, is the only one who genuinely cares about me. Since I was a little child, I have stayed with Uncle Dave whenever my brothers spend the weekend at their dad's house. He's a really cool guy with a nice flat in the city. He's an IT worker or something, makes a nice living but doesn't brag about it. Attending basketball games together is one of our activities. I became a true admirer of the sport once Dad introduced me to it when I was around 10. Gather the cards and get familiar with all the statistics. To the best of my knowledge, my brothers have no interest in basketball. Without a certain, I have never saw them attend a game. Uncle Dave told me he had tickets to this big playoff game in Chicago a few weeks ago. They're not just any tickets either, they're excellent seats. He wants to take me, too. Me and him alone. Take a weekend trip to Chicago via plane. See the game and stay in a beautiful hotel. I couldn't sleep that night because I was so excited. I would be flying for the first time. Staying at a proper hotel for the first time. The first game of professional basketball? I was thinking about how my brothers would be envious if they learned. The universe then made the decision to completely ruin my intentions. You see, my brothers were meant to spend the weekend at their dad's house, but their dad unexpectedly had to go on a last-minute business trip, so they would be spending the night at home with us. Uncle Dave decided to extend an invitation to Chicago to them as well, as he is a fair man. A few days before to the trip, he informed me, "Hey buddy, since your brothers will be home that weekend, there will be a small alteration to our plans for Chicago. It seemed like a good idea to invite them as well. I received 2 more tickets. We'll treat it like a true family affair." Uncle Dave knows me too well for me to pretend to be cool about it. He could sense my anger. What's the matter? I assumed that having your brothers with you would make you happy. How could I respond? Actually, I despise them. Additionally, I wanted this one unique item to be mine alone, since I receive nothing while others receive everything. I simply shrugged and muttered that everything was well. Uncle Dave looked at me the way adults do when they believe they grasp something but don't. It wouldn't be fair to exclude them, and although I know you two aren't usually close, this may be a great opportunity to connect. Just? Do you mean me? Every year, my brothers and their father get to take many trips. I haven't gone to a lot of locations since we can't afford them. The one thing that would be exclusively for me was this basketball vacation. My one unique possession. They were also taking that now. I really considered telling Uncle Dave that night that I no longer wanted to attend. What was the purpose, I reasoned, if I couldn't have this one item to myself? Why should I allow my brothers to ruin the one positive connection I had? But then I saw that I would be wasting my time if I stayed at home. They would still be able to accompany their dad on all of their outings, including the game. Once more, I would have nothing. I'm close to Uncle Dave, too. I didn't want to ruin that by acting like a whining little bitch about it. To be honest, I also didn't want to exacerbate the situation with my brothers. It's not like their dad isn't a total loser like mine, so it's not their fault. I made the decision to accept it and go on. Uncle Dave and I didn't discuss it further. I simply acted as though everything was okay with me. The evening before to our departure, my mother did what she always does, completely checked out. She was meant to assist me with packing. She was too preoccupied with messaging her new lover to enjoy the vacation, which is unlike any I've ever taken. Rick is this person. My mom acts as like he's the center of the world, even though he's only been here for about 2 months. His name is Dick. Even he isn't that good. Because he wears high-end watches, this guy who works at the auto dealership believes he's hot. But whatever. That's another matter entirely. Caleb passes by as I'm in my room attempting to decide what to pack for Chicago in April. He normally acts as like my room doesn't exist, so it's strange when he stops at my door. "Do you require assistance?" Observing the disarray on my bed, he asks. I won't tell lies. I couldn't understand. I had no idea what I was doing, and Caleb doesn't simply volunteer to help me with things. I said, yes. In fact, he offered me some sound counsel on layers and crap. He even let me use his nice sweatshirt. I was waiting for the joke the entire time, for him to chuckle and say something like sick, but he didn't. He was just kind. I told my friend Marcus about it over the phone after he left. "Something strange is going on, dude. My brothers are treating me well," I remarked. Marcus chuckled. They may have been body stolen, or perhaps they finally recognized what jerks they had been. I was unable to determine their angle, but I didn't believe it to be either of those things. Individuals don't change all at once, not my brothers in particular. We all got into Uncle Dave's SUV and drove to the airport early the following morning. My brothers were behaving like they were genuinely thrilled about the trip, asking Uncle Dave about Chicago and discussing the basketball game. I simply sat there observing them and attempting to understand their situation. I had never traveled before, so I was rather anxious at the airport. In front of my brothers, I didn't want to appear like a terrified little child. However, I gripped the armrest so tightly that my knuckles hurt when we began to take off. In fact, Tyler, who was seated behind me, saw first flight. He inquired. I nodded because I didn't think I could talk without my voice breaking. He told them not to worry about it. The only frightening aspects are taking off and landing. Simply pop your ears in this manner. He demonstrated how to make my ears burst by yawning. I'm still not sure why, but I was rather affected by that little incident. It was the first time Tyler had taken the time to teach me anything. We booked into this lovely hotel when we arrived in Chicago. Uncle Dave made reservations for 2 rooms. In one, he was with one of the 4 of us boys. I'll bunk with the kid, Ethan responded right away, referring to me. Once more. Strange. They always set things up, so I was the odd one out. We just had deep dish pizza and had a little stroll around the city that first evening. My brothers continued to solicit my opinion and include me in their discussions, genuinely paying attention. To be honest, I was freaking out when I spoke. Additionally, it felt quite pleasant. I eventually worked up the nerve to ask Ethan what was going on when I was back at the motel. What are you saying? Pretending to be perplexed, he said. You understand what I mean. You people are acting strangely, I remarked. Good. You never treat me well. Ethan was kind enough to display some embarrassment. Yes, we have been considering it. I'm going to college shortly with Tyler. Perhaps we should quit treating our younger brother like such a jerk. For a moment, I didn't buy it, but I also didn't want to spoil the moment. If they desired to spend a weekend playing lovely brothers, I'm good with it. Game day was the next day. I was going crazy about seeing my favorite athletes up close, so we arrived at the arena early to watch warm-ups. In fact, I had to explain things to my brothers when they asked me questions about the participants in the game. It was pleasant, as if I knew something others didn't, for once. That's when the food line incident occurred. I didn't know I was cutting in front of several folks when I was waiting in line for nachos. I was yelled at by this bearded large guy who called me a rude little shit and said I needed to learn some manners. The guy was getting in my face while I was attempting to apologize, so I became a bit alarmed. Suddenly, Ethan appeared and moved to block the guy's path. Take a step back. Ethan spoke in a calm tone with a hint of abrasiveness. He said he was sorry. The line was invisible to him. Respect is something your brother has to learn, the man said, refusing to back down. Ethan then confronted the man directly. We're going to go into trouble if you say anything more to my younger brother. The man backed away, saying something under his breath, as if he saw something in Ethan's eyes. I was stunned. I was referred to as his little brother by Ethan. He had defended me against an adult, and he wasn't my half-brother or the child I live with. That was a new aspect of him to me. Ethan turned to face me once the man had gone. Are you okay? Unconfident in my ability to speak, I nodded. You shouldn't worry about such jerks. Squeezing my shoulder, he said, Isn't that the purpose of brothers? I wanted to think he was real. Yes, I did. However, this voice in the back of my mind continued to tell me that it was all too wonderful to be true. Tyler and Caleb were furious to hear what had transpired when we returned to our seats with the dinner. Tyler remarked, You ought to have invited us over. We would have supported you. The next time you're messed with, Caleb said, just point them out. We'll take care of it. Uncle Dave grinned when he heard the finish of this exchange. It's nice to see you guys watching out for one another. The way my brothers pretended at his approval, he added. I was still enjoying the fact that my brothers were genuinely standing up for me for once, but something about it seemed strange, so I dismissed that idea. The game was fantastic. We were all dancing about and giving each other high fives after my team won on a buzzer beater. We briefly had the impression of being a true family, as if I were one of them back at the hotel that evening. I remained up late talking to Ethan about ordinary things, nothing noteworthy. Movies, sports, and school. We enjoyed typical brotherly fare. He inquired about my friends and interests beyond sports. My relatives never asked me questions like that. We were going to bed when he added, "You know, I apologize for not being a better brother to you." To that, I was at a loss for words. "No, really," he added. "Dad usually gave the impression that he didn't know. As if you weren't truly a member of the family. However, that is nonsense. Our brother is you, half." I made the automated correction. "No," he answered firmly. "Just my brother, it doesn't matter about the half issue." I allowed myself to believe it while I lay there in the dark in a Chicago hotel room that night. If they truly meant it, I allowed myself to envision what it might be like. Whether they truly thought of me as their sibling going forward. In fact, the remainder of our trip was fantastic. My brothers were cool the entire time, but I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop. The day after the game, we went to Navy Pier, and they never left me. Even though Tyler usually makes fun of me for it, he shot a ton of pictures of me for my Instagram. After we returned home, I assumed that everything would return to normal. Families are on vacation, you know. Everyone gets along and is laid back. In about 2 seconds after you return home, you begin to hate each other once more. However, it was not the case. In fact, Tyler offered me a ride on the first day back at school. When he dropped me off, he added, "I don't have to take the bus. After basketball practice is over, text me. I'll come grab you." I was astonished. Like a fool, I simply nodded. It was the first time Tyler had offered to come get me at practice. Usually, I had to take the late bus to lunch that day or ask my mother. Marcus, one of my friends, saw that something was amiss. "Man, why is that dumb smile on your face?" He shoved fries in his face and asked, "My brothers are being kind." "Suspiciously nice," I said. "You mentioned that they were being kind prior to the trip, didn't you?" Marcus inquired. "Perhaps they have now realized that they have been jerks for years." I gave a shrug. Perhaps. However, individuals don't just change in that way. Not my brothers in particular, Marcus remarked. Perhaps your uncle told them something. For example, threatening to cut them off from his will if they didn't start treating you well. I chuckled, but to be honest, that made more sense than their abruptly developed morals. I was at Uncle Dave's house a few days later. My mom asked if he could have me for supper because she was working late and it wasn't the day we usually hang out. I was thrilled because Uncle Dave makes this incredible chicken parmesan that I just like. I had some homework to do after supper. Uncle Dave then gave me permission to use his home office computer. I had the office to myself as he claimed he had to make some calls anyhow. I completed my math assignment really quickly, but as I was shutting tabs, I became sidetracked and started looking at my social media. Uncle Dave's email was still open when I checked it. A topic line drew my attention, but I wasn't attempting to pry. Tech Enterprises Summer Internship Program. Final committee for selection. Uncle Dave had never told me about internships, so I was fascinated, even though I probably should have simply closed it. I decided to click on the email as it was from a large IT business, such as Major Big, and it seemed to me that Uncle Dave was not just associated with them. He was a high-ranking consultant who had a say in who was chosen for their internship. At the bottom of the email, along with other program details, it requested him to complete your recommendations for the summer cohort and indicated something about your seat allocation. Internships for college-bound youngsters that are fully compensated. Get a head start on prospective job contacts with top industry players. Goddamn. It was an opportunity like a golden ticket. Though my thoughts was racing, I felt bad for spying and closed the email. It was the first time. Uncle Dave had discussed having this type of influence in a big tech company. I knew he worked in it and was well compensated, but this looked like something else entirely. Uncle Dave took me home once I completed my schoolwork. "How are you and your brothers doing?" he said as we pulled up to my house. "You two seem to be getting along well." "Yes," I said. "Since Chicago, they have changed. Positively." He grinned. "That's good to hear. Family's important, youngster. You become increasingly aware of that as you age." I gave a nod. I wondered, though, whether he had said something to my brothers because of the manner he stated it. Had they changed so abruptly because of him? Ethan and Tyler were in the middle of a conversation when I stepped in. They passed quickly and quietly. "How was supper?" Tyler inquired. "Fine chicken parm," I said. Ethan asked what we discussed while being quite casual. I didn't say much. Attend the Bulls game. The actual question was then abandoned by Tyler. Did Uncle Dave bring up his job? Then something clicked. The interest in my uncle, the surprising kindness. The internships were known to them. I pretended to be stupid. Uncle Dave never discusses work with me, I said. They looked at each other. The one that claimed to be looking for information. Ethan says they were making plans for the summer when their dad brought up internships. Suddenly, I understood why they had been so polite. I muttered that I was exhausted and slipped into my room. I had to think. To find out why my brothers are being kind, I texted Marcus. They want admission because Uncle Dave has connections to a high-end tech internship program. Marcus responded to the SMS almost instantly. That makes far more sense than their expanding conferences, lol. To be honest, it stung even as I laughed. For a week, I allowed myself to think they genuinely cared about me and wanted to be my brothers. However, it was all phony. I was only a conduit to Uncle Dave. I was unable to concentrate at all the next day at school. I couldn't stop thinking about how phony my brothers had been. I had gotten myself into a fairly nasty attitude by the time Tyler came to get me. What got into your ass? As I climbed into the car and slammed the door more forcefully than I should have, Tyler inquired. Nothing, I whispered. You're upset about something, right? Why are you concerned? I lost my temper. Tyler seems taken aback. Whoa, relax. I was just curious. At that moment, I nearly called him out. Nearly said. Something stopped me, even though I know you're only using me to reach Uncle Dave. Perhaps I was curious to see how far they would go this deed. Or perhaps I was praying. I was mistaken. For the first time, Caleb had prepared nachos when we arrived home and offered them to me. Uncle Dave called me while we were eating to ask whether I would want to attend the Bulls game the next week. I quickly replied yes by SMS. Tyler inquired nonchalantly whether it was Uncle Dave after taking a quick look at my phone. I mentioned the game and nodded. Tyler and Caleb's exchange of glances was nearly comical. It was obvious they were intrigued. I shrugged when Caleb inquired if Uncle Dave and I were alone. Then Tyler mentioned that he and Ethan had never seen a professional game, if there were any extra tickets. They began hoping for an invitation without even waiting a full day. With a voice as phony as theirs, I said I'd ask. Tyler called me bro for the first time and slapped my back, but I now understood why. I shut the door after going to my room. I had no idea what to do. I wanted to expose them immediately, inform Uncle Dave of everything. However, I also wanted to see how far they would go and how much they would pretend to care about me in order to achieve their goals. In order to avoid ruining my connection with my brothers, I made the decision to wait and see, play along for a while and collect additional proof. We didn't really have one in the first place. I wanted to be absolutely certain that I was correct. The days that followed were quite strange. In essence, I was acting as though I was unaware that my brothers were taking advantage of me, and they were acting as though they were doing the same, acting as though they genuinely cared about me. I was the only one who could tell it was a phony, but it seemed like we were all in some bad school play. My brother's father then texted me one day after school. It was the first time. Never once did he text me. "Hey Jake, this is Greg," the message stated. "I was wondering whether you would want to join the lads for supper tomorrow. We haven't hosted you in far too long." I've never tried it for very long. Never. I had never received an invitation to their father's house for supper. Marcus chuckled when I showed him the text at lunch and said they were truly going all in. I inquired if I ought to depart. Calling it my own personal reality show, he was all for it. Greg gave me the thumbs up when I texted him back to say I would come, and he agreed to pick me up at 6. When I informed my mother, she mentioned that Greg had never invited me before, and she looked thrilled yet shocked. As usual, she ignored my argument about the strange timing. Greg arrived in his Audi, looking well-groomed as if he had just left the office. He said the guys were thrilled I was coming and greeted me as if we were old friends. He didn't appear to notice the entire journey, but I responded flatly. He inquired about things he had never been interested in before, including school, sports, and my friends. My brother's rooms were far cooler than anything at our house, and his house was enormous. Greg instructed the guys to tour me around after supper while he made some phone calls. The phony politeness vanished as soon as he was gone. As if they had to, they gave me a tour. They didn't want to. It was crazy in the basement, like a scene from MTV's Cribs. Ethan eventually inquired as to whether Uncle Dave and I will be attending the Bulls game. Yes, I replied. I informed Tyler that Uncle Dave was okay with their arriving. Uncle Dave promised him additional tickets. After a brief glance, Ethan asked me if Uncle Dave talked about his job a lot. He said their dad had told them he was doing great. And there it was. Looking for information. I questioned him why he was suddenly interested in our uncle, but I didn't give any specifics. I was just wondering, Ethan said. I have some connections, Dad said. It might be useful for college and other things. What sort of relationships? Playing stupid? I asked. Tyler leaped in. He must be employed by several large firms. Before we attend college, Dad thinks he might be able to help us find internships this summer, I said. I've never heard him say anything like that. Really? Ethan seems truly taken aback. Given how close you two are, I assumed he would have discussed it with you. I gave a shrug. Perhaps he doesn't believe I'd be interested in tech-related things, Tyler responded. You could mention that we're really into tech if he ever does bring it up. We are both considering majoring in computer science. When did it start? As of the last time I heard, Tyler was unsure and Ethan wanted to conduct business, but I just nodded. Yes, I will bring it up if it comes up. Ethan bumped my fist. Bro, we owe you one. For assisting them and using my uncle, they owe me one. The foolishness of these men. We spent some time playing pool, and I must say it was enjoyable. I nearly forgot that none of this was real for a short while after Caleb taught me some shots. Mom wanted to know how everything went when I came home. It was okay, I said. Their home was pleasant. After noting that Greg had done well for himself, she seemed a little resentful and said that she was happy he was finally including me. Said that seeing my brothers receive so much while I did not must have been difficult. I chose not to engage in conversation and simply shrugged it off. I texted Uncle Dave the next day at school to ask for assistance with a scientific assignment, just a way to speak while my brothers aren't around. He immediately responded and asked me to join him for supper at 6 o'clock. I rode the bus to Uncle Dave's apartment after school and told my brothers I was going to a friend's house. After a time of chatting about unrelated topics, I eventually asked him what he did for a living. He said, "Why the sudden interest?" with a startled expression. I played it casual and shrugged, stating that I was solely aware of the tech aspect. He used a handkerchief to wipe his lips. I work as a consultant for a number of firms. I provide them advice on things like market strategy and product development. Do you collaborate with any firms, including tech ventures? I inquired, closely observing his response. He raised his eyebrows. How are tech ventures known to you? Busted. My face was starting to grow heated. While working on my schoolwork the other day, I saw an email on your computer. I promise I wasn't spying. I saw that it was just open. Uncle Dave didn't appear angry. I was just wondering, what specifically did you observe? Something about a selection committee and an internship program. Slowly, he nodded. Indeed. I assisted in setting up their program for a summer internship. It's really competitive. What drew you to technology, as you're still too young by a few years? Not for me, please. I cut you off. My brothers have been inquiring about your work a lot, and now they have a strong interest in jobs and technology. Uncle Dave had a knowing expression on his face as he sat back in his chair. Therefore, it's likely that their unexpected kindness toward you corresponds with this new interest. Did you notice? Relieved that I wasn't dreaming, I inquired. I've known you all your life, kid. Do you really believe I was unaware of the changes following Chicago? How your brothers changed from not recognizing you to wanting to spend all of their time together? He gave a headshake. I simply believed that they could have finally matured. But there's more to it, isn't that right? I eventually took a long breath at that point and told him everything, including how I had discovered the email regarding my brother's information gathering fishing and their meal at their father's house. Uncle Dave was silent for a while after I was done. He said I deserved better and apologized. Considering how valuable the Tech Ventures internships were, he advised waiting to see how far they'd push it when I questioned if we should challenge them. He smiled and asked if I was game when I inquired if we were creating a trap. I answered, definitely feeling in charge. For the following hour, we devised a strategy. At the Bulls game, Uncle Dave would casually bring up the internships, acting as though he had recently learned of my brother's interest in technology. He would pretend to be amazed. Let's say he may be of assistance. After that, we would observe what transpired. Uncle Dave placed his hand on my shoulder as I was walking away. I want to tell you something, Jake. I will always be there for you, regardless of what happens with your brothers. You understand? I gave a nod. I had a lump in my throat. I had at least one actual person in my life. I was both anxious and eager on the night of the Bulls game. We were all brought up in Uncle Dave's SUV. Throughout the whole journey downtown, my brothers were almost kissing his ass while they questioned him about his work, the IT sector, his thoughts on AI and cryptocurrency, and other topics. To appear intelligent, they would obviously just Google. Ethan mentioned their dad's statement that Uncle Dave was employed by large computer businesses as we parked. According to Uncle Dave, he provided advising. Tyler said that Ethan has been coding since he was 12 and that they were interested in technology. It nearly made me chuckle. Never in his life had Ethan coded. Uncle Dave inquired about Ethan's programming after giving me a startled look. Ethan lied with ease, claiming that he began learning Python, then Java, and now C plus more crap. Ethan's Instagram account setup was the closest he had ever been to coding. Uncle Dave remarked, "Well, that's great. In fact, one of the businesses I work for offers incoming college freshmen an incredible internship program, but very competitive." For a moment, the automobile was completely quiet, as if my brothers were shocked that Uncle Dave had mentioned it himself. "Oh, really?" Tyler's attempt to sound informal was a complete failure. "That seems awesome." "Awesome," Uncle Dave said. Although they only accept around 10 students every summer, those who are accepted are almost assured of employment upon graduation. Beginning wages of 6 figures, choices for stocks, the process. My brothers nearly drooled over it. I struggled to suppress my laughter by biting my lip. "Whoa." Ethan spoke those words. "That sounds fantastic." "Yes, it is," Uncle Dave concurred. "In fact, I assist in managing the selecting committee." And there it was. The bomb fell. My brother's eyes widened almost uncontrollably. "You? Do you?" Tyler stumbled. "Yes," Uncle Dave stated as he shut off the vehicle. "Hey, we can discuss it later. Come, let's watch some hoops." Tyler and Ethan continued exchanging these desperate glances as if they were in shock at their good fortune. As we made our way to the stadium, Caleb simply appeared perplexed, as if he wasn't quite aware of the strategy. It was a tight contest. The entire time, with the balls just prevailing in the final second, I couldn't stop applauding, and my brother, for once, appeared to be truly interested as well. Perhaps they were simply elated about the internships. Uncle Dave recommended that we have some dinner after the game. Uncle Dave brought up the internships once more as we were waiting for our lunch at this adjacent pizza business that was still operating. "So," he began, "I'm curious, Ethan Tyler, what specifically about technology appeals to you? Which professions do you want to pursue?" They began using tech jargon, but I could see they had no idea what they were talking about. Uncle Dave cooperated, then suggested them come over that weekend to go over the procedure and revise their resumes after asking questions, and then jokingly offering to help with their tech ventures internship applications. Tyler nodded enthusiastically. To his amazement, Caleb then requested if I may come and bless his heart. It was the ideal tactic to put my brothers in a difficult situation. Uncle Dave agreed with ease, stating that I may develop an interest in technology at any age. Despite their fake smiles, I could see that Tyler and Ethan were irritated. 2 jerks. My brothers and I were virtually floating when Uncle Dave dropped us off at home. They began discussing the internships as soon as we entered. "I totally forgot I was there," Tyler remarked. "Dad is going to lose it when he hears this." In essence, Uncle Dave offered us the internships. "Not just yet," Ethan warned. "We still have this weekend to complete the transaction. Ensure that we appear well on paper." "And what about the other things Dad said?" Caleb inquired about ensuring Uncle Dave believes we are Jake's good brothers. I listened while I froze in the hallway. I had been waiting for this very moment. That's taken care of, Ethan remarked sarcastically. The child is completely believing it. Was he there at the game? He believes that we are now best friends. It's nearly too simple, Tyler chuckled. We were given six-figure positions when all we had to do was act as though we didn't care for him for a few weeks. Caleb remarked, I still feel kind of bad, and I felt a glimmer of optimism. They all have consciences. At least one of them. Don't. Flatly, Ethan replied, We're not actually harming him. He spends some time with his cool elder brothers. The internships are awarded to us. Everyone benefits. I'd had enough. Like I was just entering, I sneaked back outside and loudly shut the front door. The chatter in the kitchen abruptly ceased. My phone was left in the vehicle. Pretending I hadn't been listening, I yelled out. I immediately went to my room after that and texted Uncle Dave. You are correct. They are definitely taking advantage of me to reach you. I overheard them discussing it. He returned the text nearly instantly. I'm sorry, child, but we are certain now. Do you still intend to carry out the plan? I didn't think twice. Of course. Greg contacted Uncle Dave the following day. Uncle Dave subsequently told me, so I know. The lads were thrilled at the prospect of internships, and he occurred to mention it while catching up with his old acquaintance. Uncle Dave cooperated, said he would be glad to assist, asked Greg if he would want to attend the Saturday meeting, and Greg arrived to Uncle Dave's place before we did. Greg was shocked to see me inside when Uncle Dave answered the door with us following him. Uncle Dave had arranged documents and computers on his dining room table. It had a highly formal appearance. After we were all seated, he remarked, Let's discuss the qualities Tech Ventures is seeking in interns. He reviewed all of these prerequisites and credentials over the next hour. Although that sounded spectacular, I'm rather certain he was making it up as he went along. With frenetic nodding and questioning, my brothers and their father were taking notes. Of course, there's one more factor that's very important to Tech Ventures' character, Uncle Dave said. The room fell silent. Character, Greg said again. Uncle Dave answered, Yes, really. Tech Ventures takes pleasure in hiring only those with high moral standards, integrity, honesty, that kind of stuff. My brothers shuffled in their chairs uneasily. Uncle Dave really proceeded with the last phase of the selection process, which consists of character references and a situational judgment exam intended to evaluate moral judgment. Greg added hastily, I'm sure the boys will do fine with that. They were brought up with high morals. Uncle Dave remarked, I'm happy to hear it. Since I have previously brought up Tyler and Ethan with the committee, they appeared to be rather intrigued. This made my brothers tense up. Really? Ethan's joy was obvious. Uncle Dave answered, Yes. I told them how Jake has recently benefited much from having you two as brothers. How you've truly taken charge. He was one among them. Watched out for him. They were very amazed by that level of familial commitment. Greg's expression went cold. My brothers appeared on the verge of being ill. Uncle Dave continued, in fact. They recommended that Jake attend the last interviews. They felt it would be good to speak with him personally, regarding how wonderful you have been as brothers. For all these years, there was utter silence in the room. I was making a lot of effort not to smile. For all these years. Weekly, Tyler repeated. Uncle Dave answered, Of course, with a very innocent expression. According to Jake, you two have always been close. He was always a part of family outings, excursions, and the like. Greg cleared his throat. Actually, Dave, Jake and the lads have a separate connection. It has been difficult. Uncle Dave's eyebrows went up. In what way? Nobody said anything. I could almost see their minds racing as they tried to come up with an excuse for neglecting me for years without coming out as utter jerks. Just typical brotherly fare. At last, Ethan spoke. You are aware. UPS and Downs. I understand. Uncle Dave, Jake said. Would you concur with that? Everyone looked at me. It was my time. Then I could expose them. Inform Uncle Dave of their years-long disregard for me, how their kindness was only an attempt to secure internships. However, after observing their faces, Caleb in particular, who appeared very embarrassed, I made the decision to try something new. Yeah, I shrugged. Normal brother stuff. Regardless, it's not as if they want me to go on trips with their father or anything. If it was possible, the room became even more silent. Journeys. Uncle Dave looked at Greg and inquired. Jake doesn't go on excursions with you, but the guys do. Greg's cheeks flushed. Dave, you know him. I can't claim Jake as my own. I know who his biological son is. Uncle Dave interrupted him. I'm just shocked that you haven't mentioned him in all these years. Just once. Greg couldn't respond to it. We sat in awkward quiet as Uncle Dave got up, stated the discussion had been eye-opening, and went to his office to make some calls. The moment his door closed, Greg turned on me, furious, and demanded to know why in the world that had happened. I just answered. I told the truth, and shrugged. Apologies if it interfered with their plans. He opened his mouth to yell, but Ethan interrupted. Uncle Dave may return at any moment, he reminded him. Greg inhaled and made an effort to remain composed, stating that the internships were crucial and that he didn't want any miscommunications to ruin the situation. I retaliated by asking whether he planned to ignore me for 15 years or to act as though they cared only once they realized Uncle Dave could assist them. I informed them directly that I had overheard their brief post-game discussion about how simple it was to seem to care. I kept Caleb from crying, even though he seemed like he would. Then I revealed the truth. I got up and informed them that Uncle Dave and I already knew everything, and that the purpose of the meeting was to gauge their level of cooperation. Their expressions nearly made the years of rejection worthwhile. Their expressions upon realizing that we had set them up, really valuable. Greg's face became purple. Tyler and Ethan appeared to be about to fuck themselves. Caleb was the only one with the grace to appear embarrassed. Uncle Dave returned with a chilly demeanor. So, should we talk about those internships some more? The events that followed were horrific. Uncle Dave refused to let them intern. They were physically decimated by him. He had, it turned out, taped everything. Their phony technical jargon. They acknowledged that they were taking advantage of me, and Greg was trying to make relationships. Uncle Dave said, nonchalantly, that because Tech Ventures takes ethics seriously, the board would be interested in the tapes. Greg went into overdrive, accusing it of blackmail. It's just facts, Uncle Dave said with a giggle. There are repercussions for actions. Greg betrayed me by accusing me of causing chaos. I retorted that I had had enough of being exploited. Uncle Dave cut Ethan off as he attempted to clarify, stating that they were disqualified and that he would be telling other businesses as well. Tyler lost it, saying that not being best friends with me was ruining their futures. Uncle Dave remained silent, claiming that they were being held responsible for their attempts to use dishonesty to obtain employment. Then he commanded them to go. Caleb looked back at me as Greg virtually pulled him along. I nearly felt sorry for him. There was nuclear fallout the next week. When my mother learned what had transpired, she finally grew a spine. It was a fight to end all fights between her and Greg. At school, my brothers refused to even glance at me. They said that I was a cunning psychopath who destroyed their life. In any case, you get what you give. Uncle Dave delivered the greatest surprise 2 weeks later. He believed I had promised after seeing me assist those young basketball players. Over the summer, he arranged for me to get admitted to this prestigious basketball camp, the sort that scouts from colleges go to. After that, Tyler and Ethan essentially shunned me. I'm good with it. Even now and again, Caleb attempts to speak, but I quickly cut him off. Too late, too little. A month later, Greg and my mother parted ways. My brothers made the permanent move to live with their father. In addition to child support, which Greg now pays, Mom and I received the house. I agree. Thanks to Uncle Dave's acquaintance, who is a lawyer, I occasionally question whether my retaliation was excessive. Then I recall being treated as if I didn't exist for 15 years. And they got precisely what they deserved, in my opinion. Life isn't flawless. Half the time, Mom is still a mess. There are still days when I feel isolated. But at least I now recognize my value. No one uses me as a stepping stone, and that's a valuable lesson, even if it meant destroying every bridge in the process.